How's it going? This is Hoiman, and today we're taking a look at the S.H.Figuarts Donald figure. So for the packaging, you have a nice illustration of the figure on the front, and then you have a small window to see pretty much the whole figure inside. And that extends to the top. The side, you have a nice picture of the figure, and then the other side you just have the name. The bottom, you have some legal stuff. And in the back you have various pictures of the figure, and it also advertises Sora as well. And then here you just have more legal stuff. To open the box, just lift open the side flap. And then you just lift open the front cover. And there's the figure all together with his accessories. Not really a whole lot. So first you do get some instructions showing what the figure comes with and how to operate the accessories. Okay, so here's the actual figure, and as expected from Figuarts, the sculpt and detail on this figure is really nice. Pretty much captures all the detail you'd expect the character to have. So looking at the face, I definitely feel that they capture the likeness of Donald really well. Looks like him from all angles. And then the head itself is molded in white plastic, whereas the beak seems to be painted, and you can see the inside of his mouth and tongue are painted as well. Looks very nice and clean. But I will say there is quite a few seam lines that run across his beak here, so it's quite noticeable, especially on the bright color. And then there's a seam line that runs through the head as well, and where they connected the face together. And because it's on a white color, it's quite noticeable. But the eyes are nicely painted, look very nice and clean. And then the fringe of his hair here is well sculpted and detailed. And then you move on to his hat, really well sculpted, and you see all the zip details in there. And it's painted in a nice metallic silver, so it really stands out. And then the zip at the tip here is a softer material, so you don't have to worry too much about that breaking. And then you have the buckle here, which is nicely sculpted and painted as well. Moving down to the torso, lots of detail going on. So you have all the zips and the pouches, all individually sculpted and detailed. And then the whole torso itself is kind of a softer material as well. So it's quite a nice touch. And you have the yellow stripes that are painted on, which are very clean for the most part, but there is a bit of a slops here and there. And then the bracelets are really well sculpted and detailed as well. But you can see the seam line that runs here that connects it. So it's quite noticeable. And then the hands themselves are really well sculpted and detailed as well. And you move on to his hips. Great sculpt work again. The tail is nicely sculpted and detailed. But I will say there are really odd seam lines that really run across the whole length of his body. And because it's on white color, it's quite noticeable as well. And the legs themselves are well sculpted. Not really a whole lot of paint, it's just molded in yellow plastic, but they look nice nonetheless. So in terms of sculpt, they definitely capture the likeness of Donald from the Kingdom Hearts games really well. So for articulation, the neck is on a double ball joint, so he can look up about that much. Although the collar is actually a softer material, it still does kind of hinder the head a little bit. And then he can look down about that much, but again the collar kind of restricts it a little bit. He can tilt his head side to side as well as twist. And then the shoulders are on ball joints, so you can move his arms about however you like. And like I already mentioned, all of this part of the clothing and the shirt here is all softer material, so this doesn't really restrict the arm movement too much. The ball joint is also on a hinge, so you can bring his arm out to the side. And then the elbows are on hinges, so you can get about a 90-degree bend from them. And then for the rest are on ball joints, you can move those however you like. And then for the torso, it's actually quite interesting. So it's on a ball joint, but it's also connected onto a hinge. So I don't know if you can see that on camera, but the hinge allows the body to kind of extend upwards from the rest of his body a little bit, only very slightly. But with this articulation, you can bend forward about that much, bend back about that much. You can lean side to side. You can also twist. And then for the hips, so they're on ball joints and then it's kind of connected to a hinge, but it has restrictions. So you can twist his leg all the way around pretty much. And the ball joint also has a pull down method. So you can pull it from the body a bit, and this allows for more range. So you can kick forward that much, kick back that much. And like I said, with restriction, it kind of, you can rotate the leg side to side, but it kind of gets restricted at some point. So you can go that far to the side and go about that far in. So it's kind of interesting how they designed the hip articulation, but overall it does work well. So that's the articulation. Let's look at the accessories. So for hands, he comes with a pair of open palmed hands, a pair of hands to hold his weapon, and then one kind of flashy hand to hold his weapon as well. But I will say it is quite loose when he holds the weapon with his hand. It's not quite as snug. For faces, he comes with a default happy kind of smiling face. He comes with a smiling face looking to his side. And then he also comes with an angry shouting face. And then finally he comes with his weapon, really well sculpted and detailed. Nice use of the glossy finish for the handle, whereas the silver parts and the red here are all metallic, so it looks really nice. And it can remove the tip as well, so you can allow Donald to hold the weapon. So my final thoughts are, overall this is a nice looking figure of Donald. Definitely captures the lightness and the detail of the character really well, especially from the Kingdom Hearts game. And for such a small figure, they did a pretty good job of retaining all the articulation that Figuarts is known for. So that in itself is pretty impressive, and they also managed to fit all the detail you'd expect into a small figure as well. So overall, for this scale of a figure, they managed to cram in all the detail and articulation, and overall it is very impressive. So just for comparison, this is Akiba Red by Figuarts, and I'd say he's pretty much a standard Figuarts size. And if you compare Donald next to Akiba Red, you can see just how small this figure actually is. So like I already said, it's impressive that they managed to cram in all the articulation and detail into such a small figure. But despite that, I do have quite a few gripes with the figure. So first, like I said, there are noticeable seam lines that run through his face, and especially where they connected the head together. I think it would be nice if the whole head was a solid piece rather than swapping out the face, because then you kind of remove this seam line across his head. And like I said, because they're on bright colors, they are quite noticeable. And this is especially apparent on his body here as well. There's just a lot of odd seam lines of how they put the figure together. But I think my biggest gripe with the figure is probably the feet. So although he has ball joints and it's nice engineering in how they made the leg articulate, because they don't have ball joints for his ankles, it really restricts the poses you can do with this figure. So if I want to make Donald do an action pose, you can't get his feet flat. So it's almost makes these ball joints kind of pointless, because not having the ball joints for his ankles really restricts the poses you could do. So it would be nice if they did include ball joints here. I'm not too sure why they didn't. I'm not sure if it's because the scale is too small or they couldn't find a way to do it. But if they couldn't do it that way, then I wouldn't mind if they included interchangeable feet with different poses, just so that you can get more variety of poses you can do. So that's my biggest gripe with the figure. And I suppose not really a gripe with the figure itself, but the price for this figure, for whatever reason, is really expensive. It took me a long time to find this figure for a relatively decent price, and even then he's quite expensive. And for whatever reason, out of all the Kingdom Hearts Figuarts figures, Donald seems to be the most expensive. So I'm not too sure why exactly that's the case. And because he's so expensive, for what you get in the box, like I said, he's a very small figure, doesn't come with that much accessories. So for the expensive price you're paying, you're not really getting a whole lot of this figure. So that kind of leads me to feel that if you are a huge fan of Donald, especially in his Kingdom Hearts design, then I can still recommend this figure. But for people who just kind of are more casual on getting figures, this one is kind of detract because of his expensive price and for how little you get. So like I said, if you are a massive fan of this character, or you just like to complete the whole Kingdom Hearts set, then I can still recommend getting this figure because he is still a decent figure, but just keep in mind with all the faults I've mentioned. But that's my review. Thank you for watching and enjoy some pictures.